Okay, you guys, welcome to Boss Bitch Radio. Today, we are going to continue our journey on Mindset Mastery Mondays. That's a mouthful, but you know, I like a mouthful. And we started with, we meaning me, an episode on crushing your self-limiting beliefs. So if you have not taken a listen to that, I highly recommend that you go back to episode 183 and start there. And that will set the foundation for the rest of these episodes as we go through them every Monday. And I'm excited to bring them to you one by one to help you master your mindset, because the foundation of your success relies heavily on the thoughts and the beliefs that you have about yourself and your ability to succeed. So I figured, why don't we start there? I know you all want to hear about how to get six-pack abs. I know you want to hear about the best meal plan, the perfect macros, the best training program. None of that fucking matters if your brain is not in the right space and you are not making the right decisions and thinking the right thoughts for you to achieve your goals. No meal plan, workout plan, cardio program, anything that totes to be the answer to all of your health and fitness needs is going to work if you do not have a solid mindset and have that figured out. So that's why I'm here. I'm here to help you do that. And if you are listening to this in your ears and not viewing this on the YouTubes, make sure you go check it out on the YouTubes, because I got YouTube's fams over here. Okay. So the episode today, we're going to talk about some key factors in what it takes to cultivate, I'm very excited today, a growth mindset. Now, we're going to define that here in a second, but you have to understand why that's important for success in setting goals, specifically health and fitness, because I know that's why you're here, but goals in general. So we are going to explore the transformative concept of having a growth mindset in its contrast with the fear of failure. And we're going to highlight the profound impact on our approach to challenges, right? Super important that you face them with a mindset that is going to help you achieve success, and our willingness to persevere, which, if you listen to episode 183, I did talk about there is a time to fold. There is a time to just say, like, you know, there's no amount of self-belief and perseverance that is interesting me in continuing to achieve this goal. And I have been there before, and I'll share those stories when we get to that episode. But first, let's define the concepts of a growth mindset, so that way you have an understanding of what that means when we're rolling forward. Everyone has a different definition, but I'm going to read this to you, okay? The definition of a growth mindset. So, growth mindset is the belief that our abilities and our intelligence can be developed through dedication, effort, learning. Individuals with a growth mindset see challenges as opportunities to learn, okay? Definitely can resonate with this. I know for myself, I see challenges as, okay, how did this not work this time? This is also going and tying into failure. And rather than letting them provide setbacks for me in my journey, I kind of use that as jet fuel to go forward into other things that could potentially work. So when you can see these challenges as opportunities for growth and learning, rather than indications of your innate limitations, you will have much more success in your endeavors, whatever they may be. Okay. So the fear of failure, let's talk about that. This is a huge one I see working with clients, specifically in the competitive space, or women that are interested in competing, and they have this fear that they're going to look stupid, feel stupid, not going to win. You know, they have all these things that come up, and it often stems from a fixed mindset. So they believe that their talents and abilities are static, right? And this goes with any form of fear of failure when it comes to achieving your goals, and you're kind of setting that negative self-limiting belief, is you tend to give up when you're faced with setbacks, rather than sit in the discomfort, sit in the unknown, sit in the uncertainty for a minute, I'm not telling you not to feel the feelings. Feel all the feelings. Girl, I feel them feelings. I feel them up, down, sideways, upside down, all the way around. I feel them all. I just don't live in those feelings. I pull the facts from the situation rather than stew in the fear of all the feelings. Super important. Super important for you to distinguish or be very aware of the difference, okay? So, one quote that I read that is Matthew McConaughey quote. He did this great speech to some college graduates. I'm totally going to tear it up, but and I'm not going to attempt to recreate the speech, but it's a fantastic speech. It's a very well-known speech, and he talks about overcoming fears, and he says overcoming our fears in the process of overcoming our fears, we make friends with ourselves. Very important. That is definitely a tweetable, a quotable, whatever. It's very important because it's true. So the fear of failure is going to set you back because it's going to stop you from moving forward. It's going to stop you, and you're going to then create these scenarios mentally, potentially, that are going to stop you from pursuing your goals and moving forward. This fear can also lead to, again, avoiding challenges, right? And being like, I don't want to do that thing. That's scary. I might suck at that. I might, fail at that. I still do that too from time to time with things. I know when I want to and when I'm bullshitting myself, right? So for example, if we went, bungee jumping or like my kids wanted to go bungee jumping and they want me to go bungee jumping and I have this fear of dying. Okay. Not necessarily something that like, if I do it, if I don't do it, it's going to stop me from achieving some certain goal. So there's a time and a place for it. I feel like you got to use your intuition, which is knowing without reason. Okay. In deciding where your fears are conducive to you, in my case of not dying off or jumping off of a bridge, and where they're silly, right? Where they're just, they might feel very real to you in the moment. I'm not taking away from that visceral response because it's a thing. However, if it is some conceptualized story or outcome that you have created based off of not knowing, but just assuming because you have these self-limiting beliefs, these are the things that are going to hold you back from moving forward. And that's what I'm hoping to help get into your brain to make some changes and start seeing for yourself that you are capable of doing hard things and coming out at the other end very, very successful. So one way to really hone in your growth mindset is to put a huge emphasis on learning and development, whatever that may mean for you. For me, I like to do a lot of self-development things, and a lot of that work has helped me with developing a positive mindset, positive self-beliefs, abolishing self-limiting beliefs. If you listen to episode 183, you heard me rant on and on about essentially like the self-limiting belief I had as, an early, a young woman because of my familial history and essentially my ancestors and my grandparents and my parents and things like that. And I could have very easily just said, well, like, this is the way it's supposed to be. This is how things are because this is how my family was. And, this is how I was raised is a scarcity mindset. I love my parents dearly, but they were not, and still to this day, not in a positive growth mindset capacity. And so these were things that I took and put at a high value for myself once I was of the ability to understand that there was a better way to live my life and not always live in scarcity and fear that, I wasn't going to have enough money to pay the bills or enough food on the table, or I wasn't going to be good enough to achieve these things because I was, not a college graduate and things of that nature. And so when I focused on filling my brain with positive things and understanding that was going to help set a foundation for me to continue to want to grow and learn in other areas, it has been so transformative in not only my health and my fitness, but the success of my business and other areas of my life, right? Relationships and things like that, because I'm always wanting to learn. There's an abundance of resources out there, clearly, like this podcast you're listening to, which thank you so much. I'm grateful for that. But other podcasts, other courses and workshops. And, Google is the world's best assistant. Like anything you want to know and learn, you can find on Google. So I just am a voracious learner of things that I'm passionate about, right? One of my coaches, I don't know, shared this early on, and then I started seeing it everywhere, that I needed to focus on my strengths instead of honing in and being so concerned about improving my weaknesses. And when I started doing that and focusing on my strengths, one, it was more enjoyable, right? And two, I started to excel in the areas of which I was passionate about because I was refining my techniques with everything. For example, the podcast, I had no idea what the fuck I was doing, okay? Sometimes I still wonder, but where I am now versus where I was 2 years ago, I can't even go back and listen to those first episodes because they make me want to cringe. So things have drastically improved. I've gotten smarter. I've researched podcasting setups and how to properly deliver. And yeah, I'm still working on staying on track because I like to squirrel a little bit of ADHD. Will do that to you. But that all being said, I knew there were certain things that I wanted to do to improve and get better and master at this craft. And it's going to feel clunky when you're doing something new and you're learning about it. You're going to feel like you're in a bumper car and, you're banging up against stuff. But the one thing that I know is, had I just been scared to start, which let me tell you, I was, and I started my podcast probably about 5 years later than I should have. I just dove in and I jumped in with both feet. I didn't kind of 1 foot in and kind of 1 foot out. I went in both motherfucking feet. And I was like, give me all the tools, give me all the hardware, give me all the software, hire a coach, and let's fucking go. And that's when you can have a positive growth mindset where you're obsessed with learning and being better as a human. Some remarkable things will happen, and that has led me to hire some incredible mentors and meet some amazing people that have helped me rise to that occasion, right? Other than continuing to put myself maybe around people that are not of a growth mindset, that are constantly negative, that think the world is out to get them, and are always living in a state of fear. Learning and development, can't stress it enough if you can't already tell. So this helps me view failure as just valuable feedback as it comes. And this just guides my future strategy. So for example, the podcast that I recorded before this, 183, I recorded video, and this is the second time that I did not press the right setting and I did not record the video. So I talk about some visuals in that, which I'll go over here because now my video is recording. And so I've definitely beat myself up and be like, oh my God, you're so stupid. You don't know how to deal with technology. And no, it's just feedback. It didn't work. I went in, I played with the settings. This now guided my next strategy, which was, we're recording, bitches, and we got this shit on video. So when you can just not beat yourself up, recover and move forward, which sometimes can be challenging, you start to build this muscle. It's like, I akin it to like doing reps, right? The more reps I get in, the more reps I do recording videos solo, which I had resistance towards. And my podcast manager was like, yo, you need to do solo videos. I'm like, okay, I guess I gotta be cute, a little bit cute. But when you can push past that resistance and you start building that momentum of like, oh shit, I did this hard thing. Okay, it wasn't that hard. You have to just keep building that muscle, that confidence muscle, that self-empowerment muscle, that you can indeed do hard things. And this makes me believe time and time again that I can do some shit that I'm like, I don't know how I did that shit, but I did that shit because I believed that I could do this shit. You know what I'm saying? No, I'm saying ham sandwich. So that's one key thing I would love for you to take away. Emphasis on learning and development. Super, super important that you are able to hone in on improving your mindset with things that are going to fill your brain up with positivity and getting you to think the right thoughts. Because like I always say, I know I wasn't the one that invented this, but you spend the most time with yourself, and it is a great idea to get started sooner than later on your self limiting beliefs and abolishing them, and also working on your growth mindset versus having a fixed mindset. Okay. Now, let's talk about a growth mindset in its role for perseverance, which we've already touched on, which we already touched on here lightly. However, this growth mindset, I strongly believe, has embedded a resilience within me. Again, like I said, just feeling like I'm going to do the shit. I'm going to figure it out. I don't know how, I don't know where, and I don't know a lot of things, but I'm just going to take the next step. And we talked about that in episode 183. You got to take a listen. We'll link it up in the show notes if you need an easy little clicky click to find it. But individuals are more likely to persist as they understand that setbacks are temporary and they are a part of the learning process. Okay. So if you can understand that, it's just temporary, it's just a little hiccup, and you sometimes will take 2 steps forward and take 5 steps back. And this is what I just call the cha-cha. And I don't know that that's how the cha-cha is done, but you are doing this dance, and it's just the dance of life. And sometimes you take 10 steps forward and you take 1 step back, but you just keep going. And a lot of times this happens with clients when they're dieting or they're getting ready for a show and they have a week or 2 where there's a plateau. They're doing all the things. Maybe they had some slip ups. Maybe they had a moment where they went off track on their diet or their meal plan and scale goes up. You have to push through and just keep doing unless it's time to fold. And we'll talk about that in the next episode down the line. But you're more likely to be able to persist if you have looked at these little hiccups and these setbacks as opportunities for you to grow. Okay. So I want you to think about this as just part of the learning process, but I want you to also ask yourself, like, is there an instance somewhere in your life that you can recall where the fear of failure caused you to consider quitting? Now, did you indeed quit? And if you did, do you have some regret around that? And if you didn't and you persevered, are you looking back and thinking to yourself, I'm so glad I did not give up? Because I'm going to tell you right now, bitches, I can't even tell you how many times during the 16 times I got my ass on stage that I considered quitting throughout those 16 preps. Multiple times. Multiple times. And there's just a point where you get wrapped up in your feelings sometimes, in your emotions. And I'm speaking for myself and some of my clients in my experience, where you get wrapped up. You get wrapped up in that emotion. You have a bad day. You know, you're already not progressing. You know, your cat fucking barfs on the floor. You know, your boss yells at you. Like, all these things are coming at you. You're in the height of an emotional moment, right? You're having this kind of flare up, if you will, and you consider quitting. Maybe you do something off track and off plan to have this part of your self-fulfilling prophecy, which we talked about on the other episode, where you're like, oh, I'm not going to win anyways, or I can't do it. I'm not going to make it. And then you start doing these things and kind of like AKA self-sabotaging. That happens. And I have been there, and I have come out the other end because I isolate that instance, this emotional outburst, if you will, of feeling like I want to quit. And I give myself a 24-hour, sometimes a 48-hour cool down period where I'm like, bitch, get some rest, take a nap, drink your water, take your supplements, revisit this thought tomorrow. And generally, if I revisit this without writing things down, I will still continue to vote in my favor of quitting. Okay. When I actually put pen to paper, it's transformative. It's amazing what happens when you put pen to paper and you're like, how can I look at this? How can I reframe this? You think about this before you start writing in a way that is very neutral. Okay. Pros and cons. We talked about this in the last episode. If I were to quit, what are the pros? What are the cons of this? Right? Like, the cons could be not fulfilling your goal, not sticking through the word, setting your word and being accountable to what you said you were going to do. The pros could be, I could finally have that burger. I don't know. But you see what I'm saying here is you have to really get out of the emotional headspace, put it down on paper, just mentally dump. Let your brain take a dump on paper of all the things that are floating around in your head that are potentially giving you the thoughts and ideas that it's time to throw in the towel and quit because you have maybe some self-limiting beliefs that are standing in your way. Okay? Very, very important. Get that going. Now, cultivating a growth mindset. Let's dive into that. That's why you're here. What does that involve? We've already gone over some tips, but some other things are mindful self-talk. Now, I'm not, I don't think I'm super woo-woo. I'm like a sprinkle woo-woo, but I do think that there is something to be said about having some mindful self-talk where you are aware of the things that you're saying to yourself, catch them as they're happening, right? Because you're having a one-sided conversation. Sometimes it's like another person is in there, but you're having this conversation. Replace that with statements that reflect an openness and a possibility to learning and being better and improving. So, for example, negative self-talk is, I can't do this. I'm terrible at this. I'll suck. I'll look stupid. I'm going to make a fool of myself. We're just going to frame this from the perspective of somebody who wants to compete or maybe is in a prep or maybe, wants to do some kind of like transformation program. Like we offer transformation programs and they're like, you have this like thing that kicks up that you can't do it, right? I'm not going to be able to follow through. I never follow through. Whatever those negative things that come up for you, you become aware of those. Now, if you have a growth mindset and you are working on flipping the script that you usually have with yourself, right? A way to reframe that is, this is challenging, but with effort, with practice, with me trying to figure things out, with really diving deep, I can improve and I can master that. It does not need to be perfect. We are not stretching for perfection because then you set yourself up to then be disappointed if that doesn't happen. We're just talking about shifting the energy and in the headspace of which you are living when it comes to looking to pursue goals or achieving a goal that you set out for. Okay. Now, one thing that I talked about in the last episode that there's no video for, unfortunately, was I was very aware of this early on. Now, for those of you that aren't super familiar, you may be new to Boss Bitch Radio. Boss Bitch was a 16-year-old mom. By the time I was a few days after my 19th birthday, I had 2 children. So I had my daughter a few days after I turned 19, and single mom in it, right? But during that period of time, my health was terrible. In between my babies, before I had my babies, in high school, right? I wasn't technically like super, by standards of society, I wasn't like obese, but I was very, very unhealthy. And I ended up in the hospital. And so the reason why this is important for this conversation is because my story, while I don't want to say I don't think it's important, but I'm just like, oh, that was just how my life was. I don't know. I didn't really think like I was making any big triumphs as I now am 45 years old. But now looking back, and people are just like, holy shit, wow, you're brave. Oh my gosh, your story's incredible. And I'm like, okay, thank you. But at the time, this was my reality. So if you're watching on YouTube, if you're not watching on YouTube, head over to YouTube. You can see some photos. But this was me in the hospital with a gallbladder that was on the brink of explosion because my diet consisted of double quarter pounders with cheese, extra greasy. The guy I was dating in high school at the time would pick me up from school. We would go to McDonald's, usually at least 3 to 4 times out of the week. And that was our order. And he would ask them in the drive-thru, can you make it extra greasy? And they'd be like, what? And he'd be like, can you pick the greasiest patties out for the burger? Not a joke. I mean, I'm not lying. This is 100% true. And so there I was, and I'd partake, and then I'd come home, and my meals would consist of frozen bean and cheese burritos layered with Philadelphia cream cheese and salsa, and that was usually a snack or whatever. And my breakfast was Entenmann's chocolate-covered donuts. Like, this is how I ate for years, right? And you think, oh, lots of teenagers eat like that. Adults eat like that. Well, my body did not like that. And this is where it landed me in the hospital, over 200 pounds with a gallbladder that was about to kill me. So that was the story of, had I continued to believe that was my destiny and like, oh, well, I don't know, this is just how my family eats. This is just how my dad raised me, and just believe that. And I created this story that I could never, eat healthy because it's in my genetics and all these things. That would have been the outcome that I would have achieved for myself. But I did not believe that. I knew there was a better way. And it started by me getting really, really interested in the health and fitness magazines and seeing these women that competed and manifesting that for myself and just believing that I knew there was a different way. If somebody could do it, I could do it too, right? And I want that for you guys. So that's the power of mindful self-talk and understanding that I didn't constantly fill my brain with thoughts of negativity. I just knew that I was chasing the desire to be 1% better. I didn't know that at the time, but I was just chasing my desire to be better. I didn't want to always be the teenage welfare single mom whose baby daddy left when she was pregnant with the second baby. That was not how I wanted to be associated and live my life accordingly to that. I wanted to use that as that is where I came from, but that's not who I am. Okay. So that was one area in my life. The second area was when I was said single mom here in my mom jeans. You can see this over on the YouTubes, but this is Ish the Beast when she was just a little baby. And this is her older brother, my oldest son. And this was at Boomers. So if anybody is local to the area, this is the Boomers parking lot, and me single momming it, 2 jobs, taking the kids on the weekends for a little bit of time to try to get like some activity and play and things like that. But this is the girl that, had I believed the story of this teenage mom who was left to raise 2 kids by herself, that moved out of her parents' house and was on every form of government assistance, if I believed that were to be my story moving forward, that life was always going to be a struggle, then that's what I would believe. And that's what I would manifest for myself. And I decided that was not going to be my story. I was going to figure out a better way, and I did. And here I am. And that has led me to believe that I can be a boss bitch. This was for my 45th birthday, me just, in my stilettos on a rock on the beach, and then being just empowered to be, basically naked on the beach and just being like, this is who I am. This is how I live my life. And those that like it, love me, and they can stay, and those that don't, they just leave and they go find somebody else to follow. That's probably fake as fuck. So mindful self-talk, believe it to achieve it. I strongly believe that thoughts become things, so choose good ones. And that is a quote from somebody. I don't know, but it is a quote. All right. So the other way that we cultivate a growth mindset is embracing your challenges, which we've touched on a little bit here, but embrace them as chances to develop new skills and expand your capabilities. It's easy enough, right? Not, but it is. It really is. So an avoidant response to this for somebody who has like a limited self-belief system is like, oh, I'm not going to, embrace this challenge of taking a new role at work, a leadership responsibility, because I'm afraid of public speaking, and I'm going to have to, be in some kind of leadership role, which is going to require me to do some kind of maybe leading meetings or talking with other people in the company and being in a position where the spotlight is on you, right? So that is an avoidance response. When you are faced with a challenge, you avoid it because you have this fear wrapped around being the center of attention in some way, shape, or form, right? Trust me, I've been there. And now I get excited. I'm like, oh, you want me to come do this seminar? Perfect. You want me to talk on your podcast? Great. I can get this guest on that scares the shit out of me? Fantastic. Let's do it. That's how I take it. I'm still having this response in my body, right? This response of like, ugh, a little bit of barfiness. But I accept it as an opportunity. I recognize that speaking skills can be developed. I have improved dramatically since day one. And this has come by way of practice and experience and course correcting and making sure that I'm very aware of what the message is that I'm trying to convey and being very present and in my body and not being concerned about what everyone else is thinking, or saying, or she sounds dumb, or she looks dumb, or she says fuck too much, or whatever. Great. That's great. I mean, don't say fuck at work unless you can say fuck at work, but yeah, they'll come for me. Don't tell them I told you to say that. So very important. Next one, learning from your failures, which I think is natural for me now, was not natural for me at first. It was a challenge for me to see something not work or not go well, generally in the form of the business side of things early on when I first started, because I had zero experience with business and literally Google taught me how to run a business for the most part because I Googled everything to figure shit out. But when I would try something and it didn't work, I was just like, okay, that's one way this isn't going to work. But there's other ways, right? There's other ways to figure things out. Or I didn't nail it out the ballpark or hit it out the ballpark with this launch or this program or this product, right? I've launched so many things in the fitness industry through my studio and whatnot. And some of them bombed and some of them were absolutely amazing, right? And then there were other considerations. Sometimes it's the time of the year because fitness ebbs and flows. And so I had to really take all of those things into consideration before I just started to get hard on myself for being like, oh, I suck at this thing. So if you are at work, you have a failed project and you feel defeated about it, then you're not going to revisit it. That's kind of a negative response. You get defeated. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to revisit it. Now, if you have a growth mindset and you start to cultivate that and work on that, the response there is you can analyze what didn't go right. What can I identify here that can be improved? What can I learn from it? And what can I take away from this for future projects or, things that we're working on that can be conducive for this next project to go well or to, for it to not fail. So I don't think of things as failures. I'm like, that just was one way it didn't work, right? Same thing like in relationships. In my marriage, I don't think my marriage failed. I just think that we learned so much from that experience. Myself, I know for sure, my ex-husband as well. And I learned so much about what not to do for my next relationships. And, anytime I get into a long-term relationship or I meet a partner, a potential partner, I'm very, very aware of that. And I try not to carry the same types of perceived failures or mindsets around my previous relationships into new ones and think like, oh, this is one that I fucking hate. Men are trash. And I'm like, really? Really? All men are trash? You're just going to throw them all in the trash can, because I know some women who are trash too. So I don't fall into the all or nothing, right? Where like all men are trash, all men are this, all men are that. Like I'm not on the man hating bandwagon. And so I think if that's something that you're like, oh, well, I am, it's time to take a look at that, right? Maybe the pond in which you're fishing for the men is the trash pond. Don't fish in the trash pond. There is a great pond over here full of wonderful, shiny objects and wonderful men who are dying to have a wonderful woman or partner to be with, right? And any men, women, circle, square, whatever you associate with, you get the point. If you put all of your eggs into one basket and perceive things as they are for the entirety of that, of that species in terms of the men dating pool, you're going to create that reality for yourself. So again, you have to cultivate a positive mindset in order to have a little bit of a relaxed mindset around things and not always assume the worst, but also to help you for future endeavors. Okay. Now, the next step in working on a growth mindset involves setting some learning goals, which this one's a little more challenging for me because I tend to want to learn all the things all the time. And I used to do that. I used to buy loads of programs and never finish them. And I started to tell myself this story that like, oh, I just never finish programs, right? I buy a program and I never finish them. So I stopped that shit. I stopped telling myself that story years ago. And then when I'd buy a program, I would be committed to that program until I was done with that program before I moved on to a new thing. So another way that you can look at this as far as learning goals is setting goals that emphasize acquiring new skills and knowledge rather than just the outcome. Okay. So what I mean by that is outcome-oriented goals. And I see this a lot. And I have athletes that say this to me and I immediately am like, this is not how I roll as a coach, where you're like, I'm going to win this competition. No, that's not how we roll here. Having that outcome-oriented goal puts so much pressure on yourself, and there's so many other variables that are out of your control that you cannot possibly be in a healthy mind space and mindset going through that journey if that is indeed your MO and that is your outcome-oriented goal. I'm not saying it's not okay to want to win something, but if you flip that and you consider it as a growth mindset learning goal, which I know sounds very weird and different, but think about it in, I'm going to participate in this competition so that I can learn the different strategies and the way that my body's going to respond and gain experience, because this is a whole different beast. Regardless of the outcome, you're going to emerge with a whole host of learning, but a bag of tricks and a bag of tools and things that you discover about yourself throughout the process, versus if you just say, I want to win, right? This is all I care about. I just want to win. You have to think about it from the journey perspective and what can you learn along the way. Because again, if you just set that goal in, I have to win this competition, when that doesn't happen, you're setting yourself up for feeling that that's a failure, and then also potentially setting you up for not wanting to set goals again because you didn't achieve this outcome. So hopefully that makes sense. So you guys, we talked about setting some learning goals. We talked about learning from your failures, embracing some challenges, and having a mindful self-talk practice and strategies around that. So I'm hoping this is helping you kind of crack through some of the layers that you might be feeling some challenges around, because the shift from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset is incredibly empowering, right? We talked about this in the last episode because it just was like, I love that shit. And it's going to help you confront your challenges, right, head on, and face them with a sense of curiosity, in determination and optimism versus pessimism and negativity, and creating an environment within yourself and in your mind that you aren't able to achieve certain things. So if you can recognize how powerful this really, really is to your goals, right, your mindset, you can choose to view these obstacles as opportunities and setbacks as stepping stones, right, on your journey to success. So again, I'd like you to think long and hard about an instance where the fear of failure caused you to consider quitting, and how might adopting and adapting a growth mindset have changed that outcome when you were close to quitting, or maybe you did, right? Because you were just afraid. You were like, I can't do this thing. This is so scary. This is overwhelming. This is too much for me. So that's where I'm going to leave you today. Hopefully this episode sparked some fire under your ass and you're excited to just start really delving into some positive mindset stuff, because again, I know there is a huge a market, and there are tons of people that you can listen to for mindset and motivation. This is just the boss bitch version because this is what's worked for me and also my athletes and my clients and so many of the women that come through our studio at Venus, which is why I'm incredibly passionate about what we do, because I see this shit right before my eyes. Well, now I see it through like my trainers that work there, and I see it through their lenses, but I still see you, even if I don't know you at the studio. I see your stories, I see your triumphs, and I am here for it. So the next episode, we are going to talk about reframing challenges as catalysts for progress. And I know that's a mouthful, but I'm going to give it to you boss bitch style, and we're going to do it, and we're going to dive in because I want the best for you. I want you to bring out your inner boss bitch and lead your life like that. All right. I love you, and I'll talk to you soon. Boss bitch.